I want you to picture something ordinary. You're lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the life you wish you were living. Maybe it's a version of you that doesn't feel crushed by bills, or the you that walks into a room and feels instantly at home instead of scanning for judgment, or the you who wakes up with energy, not that quiet heaviness that follows you like a shadow. You close your eyes and you imagine it. You try to believe. You repeat affirmations. You might even visualize with all your willpower. And yet when the morning comes, nothing seems to have shifted. The same job, the same silence on your phone, the same mirror looking back at you. That's the heartbreak of manifestation, as most people attempt it. Endless wanting, endless waiting, endless effort. A cycle of reaching for something that seems to retreat as fast as you chase it. Here's the twist though. Quantum shifting, the actual movement into a new timeline of reality, isn't complicated. It isn't about squeezing harder or stacking rituals until your brain buzzes. It's not about getting the universe to finally notice you and hand over the prize. It's about a far simpler move, so simple most people step right over it. They miss it because they're searching for fireworks when the signal is quiet. They miss it because their mind is looking for steps when reality is responding to states. If you've ever felt the frustration of, why isn't this working for me? You're closer than you think. The door isn't locked. The shift doesn't require force. It requires a subtle turn of attention, the kind you can learn once and never unknow. And that's what we're about to do together. Think about this. Reality is less like a mountain you climb and more like a radio you're tuning. Every possibility you could ever live already exists, like stations humming on different frequencies. There's a version of you in a station of scarcity, always behind, always anxious. There's a version of you in a station of flow, where money comes in surprising ways, conversations feel easy, and your body finally feels light. And there are countless other stations, all already playing. Here's the mistake most people make. They try to drag their current song into a new one. They push, they hustle, they fight with what is, believing if they just apply enough effort, they'll force the universe to change tracks. But no matter how loud you scream over the music, the station doesn't shift until you turn the dial. This is where quantum shifting lives. The observer effect in physics shows us that the act of observation shapes what manifests. Not in a mystical way, but in a very practical one. What you embody as real becomes the station you lock into. Your nervous system, your posture, your tone, your breath, these are the subtle dials that tell the field which broadcast you belong to. And here's the kicker. You've been tuning all along without realizing it. When you wait for a text in desperation, you're tuned to the station of absence. When you daydream but secretly feel undeserving, you're tuned to the station of delay. The field isn't listening to your wishes, it's listening to your signal. The beauty of this? You don't need to create a station that doesn't exist yet. You don't need to force yourself into becoming someone new overnight. You just need to adjust what you're embodying, like sliding from static into clarity on a radio dial. Small internal shifts, a breath, a decision, a stance, can snap you into a frequency where life reorganizes around you. But this is where most people hit their wall. They think tuning is about affirmations, about thinking harder, about sheer mental effort. And so they repeat, while wondering why the song hasn't changed. What if the real reason is something far simpler and far stranger? Because the truth is, there's one myth almost everyone buys into, and it's the very thing keeping them stuck on the wrong station. Here's the myth. People think manifestation is about forcing belief, about convincing yourself so hard, so relentlessly, that reality finally caves in. But belief alone isn't the dial. If it were, then every person who repeated, "I am abundant" 1,000 times in front of the mirror would be swimming in money. Every person whispering love is coming before bed would wake up to their dream partner. But you and I both know it doesn't work like that. The truth is, your conscious thoughts are just the surface static. The field tunes to what's beneath, the embodied signal your whole system is broadcasting. Let me make this concrete. Imagine you've been waiting for a text after a first date. You liked them, you felt a spark, and now it's been 2 days of silence. Consciously you tell yourself, "It's fine, I'm confident, I know my worth." But underneath, Your stomach knots every time you check your phone. Your body leans forward, tense, scanning. That's the frequency the field reads, the signal of lack, of waiting, of uncertainty. And what happens? More waiting, more absence. The radio locks onto the station of, "They're not here yet," not because you did something wrong, but because your embodiment contradicted your affirmation. Here's the shift. Manifestation isn't about hammering belief into your mind, it's about aligning your body, your nervous system, your tone of being with the station you want to hear. Belief without embodiment is like spinning the radio dial without ever letting it click into place. Now think about what this means. It means the reason quantum shifting has felt elusive isn't that you're broken or unlucky or not high vibe enough. It's that you've been taught to work from the wrong layer. You've been polishing the words while leaving the frequency unchanged. When I finally understood this, everything got simpler. Because instead of asking, "How do I convince myself to believe harder?" the real question became, "What am I actually embodying right now? And is it the station I want?" And that leads us to the next critical piece. Your body can't fake safety. You can't tune into the station of abundance while your nervous system is braced for threat. You can't embody love while your chest is tight with self-doubt. Which means the gateway to quantum shifting isn't mental force at all. It's nervous system coherence. Here's the raw truth most people never connect. Your nervous system is the tuner. Think about a radio dial again. If your hand is shaky, if you're rushing, if you're twisting it back and forth in panic, you'll only ever hear static. No matter how badly you want the music, you can't lock onto the signal because your body isn't steady enough to hold it. That's what happens in manifestation. If your nervous system is stuck in fight, flight, or freeze, your whole system is jittering. It doesn't matter how many times you say the right words. Your body is still tuned to survival. The field picks that up instantly. And survival frequency is always the station of barely enough, of waiting for the other shoe to drop, of I'll relax once it finally happens. But here's the paradox. The universe doesn't send calm to make you safe first. You have to generate the safety inside you to hear the calm station, which is why nervous system regulation isn't optional. It's the key to the dial. Let me guide you through something simple right now. Close your eyes if you can. Notice your breath without changing it. Just track the rise and fall for a few cycles. Now place one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. As you inhale, let the breath drop lower into your stomach, expanding under your hand. As you exhale, sigh it out through the mouth, softening your shoulders. Do this 3 times slowly. Now picture the version of you already living the reality you desire. Don't force the image. Just feel, how would their chest rise? How would their jaw rest? Borrow that body language for a moment, hold it in silence. That's coherence beginning. That's what it feels like when the static clears and the music cuts through. When you practice this, even for a minute, you're teaching your nervous system to recognize safety before the external proof shows up. You're saying, "I can hold this station. I belong here." And that signal is far louder to the quantum field than hours of mental repetition. This is why people who seem to effortlessly manifest aren't lucky. They've simply trained their system to rest in coherence. Their body doesn't sabotage their signal with static, and coherence unlocks something deeper. Because while safety tunes the station, it's your identity that decides which station even feels like home. Here's a subtle trap: mistaking states for identity. Maybe you've had this experience. You meditate, or you visualize, or you do some breath work, and for a few minutes you feel incredible, clear, expanded, almost electric. You think, "This is it, I've shifted." But then an hour later, someone cuts you off in traffic, or you see the number in your bank account and the feeling evaporates. You're back where you started. That's because a state is temporary. It's like visiting a station for a few moments, catching a glimpse of the music and then drifting back into static. Identity, on the other hand, is the setting that locks the dial in place. Identity is the silent answer your body gives to the question, "Who am I?" Not who you want to be. Not who you're trying to become, but who you know yourself as without thinking. And here's the thing, the field responds to identity more than it does to momentary states. Because identity is the broadcast that never shuts off. It's the baseline hum beneath your thoughts. If your identity is still the struggler, no 5-minute visualization of abundance will override that signal. The dial snaps back. This is why trying to hold a high-vibe state all day feels exhausting. You're trying to manually drag the tuner against its resting place. That's why the work isn't about chasing constant positivity. It's about shifting the deeper setting, the identity that decides which frequencies feel natural. Think of it this way. If someone handed you a winning lottery ticket tomorrow, but your identity was still rooted in "I can't handle money," you'd find a way to lose it, overspend it, or push it away. The external change would collapse under the weight of the old internal identity. But when your identity shifts, even small external changes multiply. Opportunities land and actually stick because you're the kind of person who recognizes them as yours. The field doesn't need convincing. You're already tuned. So here's the real task, moving from momentary states into a new baseline identity. An identity that naturally belongs to the timeline you're calling in. And that brings us to the next leap, because identity isn't just personal. It's what locks you into a specific timeline of reality. Here's the wild part most people miss. Every possible timeline is already running. Think of them like parallel radio stations. There's a version of you already living in financial ease, already moving through life with spaciousness instead of panic. There's also a version of you constantly bracing for bills, always one step behind, always gasping for air. Both timelines exist. Both are broadcasting right now. What decides which one you experience? Identity. Identity is like your preset button on the radio. You can twist the dial for a moment, visit another station, but unless you reprogram the preset, you'll keep snapping back to the old one. Let me ground this in something real. Imagine you're facing money pressure. Rent is due, your chest is tight, and you're scrolling your bank app like it owes you answers. In those moments, your identity whispers, "I'm the kind of person who's always behind." That identity is a magnet. It locks you into the timeline where scarcity keeps repeating. Now flip it. Imagine instead that your identity quietly hums. "I'm the kind of person who always finds a way. I'm resourceful. Opportunities come through me." The outer numbers might not have shifted yet, but the timeline does, because from that identity, you take different actions. You send the email you'd normally talk yourself out of. You spot the side opportunity you would have ignored, and the field reorganizes around that signal. This isn't magic in the fairy tale sense, it's coherence in motion. Identity tunes you into the version of reality where those options already exist. And here's the liberating part. You don't need to jump timelines by sheer force. You don't have to fake it until you break yourself. You simply begin embodying the identity of the version of you already living on that timeline. Little by little, your nervous system accepts it as normal, and once it feels normal, the field locks it in. This is why affirmations often feel hollow. If the words clash with your identity, they bounce off. But when you shift identity, the words aren't needed. Your very presence is the signal. The truth is, timelines are less about choice and more about resonance. You don't chase them. You inhabit them. And the ones aligned with your identity are the ones that solidify. So the real skill becomes, how do you rehearse a new identity until it feels so embodied, so natural, that the timeline locks into place? So how do you actually rehearse a new identity until it's no longer fragile, until it becomes your natural broadcast? You need tools that go deeper than thought, because identity isn't just an idea, it's a lived frequency. Here's the toolkit I give people when they're ready to make the leap. First, bridge statements. Forget giant leaps like "I am a millionaire" when your body screams, "No, you're not." That's static. Instead, use bridges. "I'm learning to see myself as someone who can handle more," or "I'm becoming the version of me who belongs in ease." Bridge statements give your nervous system a foothold. They stretch you without snapping you. Second, somatic anchors. Words don't stick unless the body joins in. So pick a simple gesture, maybe placing your hand on your heart or standing taller with your feet grounded. Every time you use your bridge statement, pair it with the gesture. Over time, your body learns. This posture belongs to my new identity. It becomes a physical shortcut into coherence. Third, identity rehearsal. This is different from visualization. Instead of just imagining, you act as if for micro moments. When you walk into the grocery store, carry yourself as the version of you who already feels abundant. When you send an email, write it from the voice of the version of you who's already confident. These tiny rehearsals stack. They reprogram the preset button. Fourth, emotional rehearsal. Most people rehearse emotions of fear or lack without realizing it, looping worry, looping stress. Flip it. Set aside 2 minutes to breathe in the feeling of relief, of joy, of already having. Let your body taste it, not as fantasy but as memory. Because to your nervous system, rehearsed emotion is rehearsal for identity. When you combine these, bridge statements, somatic anchors, identity rehearsal, and emotional rehearsal, you create a protocol, a way of gently, consistently signaling, this is who I am now. The more often you run it, the more the new identity stops feeling like play acting and starts feeling like truth. And here's what I've seen. Once the identity locks, reality bends quickly. Not because you finally forced the universe to listen, but because your station is broadcasting clearly, without static. Let me ask you something personal. Have you noticed that the moment you stopped gripping so tightly, the thing you wanted finally showed up? Tell me your story in the comments. It might unlock someone else's leap. But even with tools, there are traps that pull people back into old frequencies. And until you know how to transmute them, they'll keep dragging the dial out of coherence. By now you might be feeling the power of rehearsal and coherence. But let's be real. Even with the tools, there are traps that pull almost everyone back into static. If we don't name them, they'll keep hijacking your signal. The first trap is urgency. Urgency whispers, if it doesn't happen now, I'll lose everything. It compresses your body, tightens your chest, speeds up your breath. And here's the catch. Urgency isn't a match for the station you want. Urgency belongs to survival timelines. When you're broadcasting urgency, you're tuned to the version of reality where things are scarce and fragile. So how do you shift it? You elongate time in your body, literally slow down. Breathe slower than feels comfortable. Speak slower. Walk slower. This doesn't just calm you. It broadcasts, I'm safe to receive. I already belong in the reality where things arrive at the right time. Urgency dissolves when you embody sufficiency. The second trap is split signals. This is when you send out 2 broadcasts at once. You say you want love, but your identity still whispers, I'm unworthy. You declare you're abundant, but every time you spend money, your body screams, danger. The field gets confused. It hears both stations, so it mirrors back static. The antidote is integrity, not in the moral sense, but in the literal sense. Wholeness. Choose the station fully. This doesn't mean erasing all doubt, but it does mean aligning your daily actions with the identity you're rehearsing. If your new identity is, I'm resourceful with money, then act like it, even with small amounts. Integrity collapses split signals into one clear frequency. The third trap is over-control. This one is sneaky because it often looks like discipline. You micromanage every step. You monitor constantly. You grip. But over-control tells the field, I don't trust the signal to hold without me. And that mistrust collapses coherence. The cure? Micro-surrenders. Instead of trying to plan every outcome, practice letting go in small ways. Leave a text unanswered for a few hours instead of checking compulsively. Go for a walk without your phone. These tiny surrenders send a huge signal. I trust the station. I don't need to clutch it. Here's the truth. These traps aren't failures. They're simply feedback. They show you where the static is sneaking in, so you can refine the broadcast. When you transmute urgency into sufficiency, split signals into integrity, and over-control into trust, the tuner steadies. The music sharpens. And then comes the real art. Learning how to hold that coherence, not just in practice sessions, but in the ordinary flow of daily life. The real test of coherence isn't in the moments you sit to meditate, or when you're repeating a bridge statement in the quiet of your room. The real test is how you move when no one's watching. Because quantum shifting isn't about carving out perfect rituals. It's about weaving the signal into the fabric of your ordinary life. Every small act becomes a chance to tune the dial. Take walking, for example. Most people walk braced, shoulders slightly hunched, rushing somewhere. That posture broadcasts urgency. But what happens if you slow down, let your shoulders drop and walk as though you already belong wherever you're headed? You've just shifted stations. You're rehearsing the identity of someone who isn't chasing life, but receiving it. Or eating. Most of us rush meals, scrolling on our phones, barely tasting the food. That broadcasts scarcity. I don't have time. I have to consume quickly before it's gone. But imagine eating as the version of you already tuned into abundance, savoring each bite, pausing between forkfuls, letting your body register satisfaction. That's coherence in action, disguised as dinner. Even in conversation, the station shows itself. If you're listening with your body tight, waiting for your turn to prove yourself, the signal is lack. But if you lean back, breathe, and allow space, you broadcast confidence. You tune into the timeline where connection flows instead of being forced. This is the secret most people miss. Coherence isn't built in the big moments of life. It's built in the ordinary ones. Because your identity doesn't care what you do for 10 minutes in meditation, if you spend the other 23 hours rehearsing scarcity, urgency, or doubt. So start treating daily life as your training ground. Each step, each bite, each interaction is an opportunity to ask, what station am I tuned to right now, and does it match the timeline I'm choosing? And when you string enough of those micro-choices together, something remarkable happens. Coherence stops being something you practice. It becomes who you are. The static fades, and the music of the new timeline becomes your baseline hum. But here's the beautiful twist. Once you stabilize this in daily life, the field doesn't just respond with little synchronicities. It begins to reshape the bigger domains: love, creativity, health, purpose. The ripple spreads wider than most people ever expect, and that's where we go next. Once coherence becomes part of your daily rhythm, the field starts reshaping bigger arenas of life. You don't have to force it. It unfolds naturally, because the signal you're sending out is consistent enough to ripple through relationships, health, creativity, even your sense of purpose. Take relationships. When your identity is still entangled with scarcity or self-doubt, every interaction feels like a test. You look for signs of rejection, you grip conversations, you overthink texts. That static bends the connection. But when coherence is your baseline, you walk into a room and your body already says, I belong here. People feel that before you speak. Relationships flow, not because you're trying harder, but because your presence is a clean signal. Creativity is another domain where the shift is dramatic. Think about a time you hit a creative block, maybe staring at a blank page, the cursor blinking like it's mocking you. You tell yourself, I have to get this out. But the pressure tightens your chest and scrambles your thoughts. That's a station of force. But if you pause, breathe, and slip into coherence, the block softens. The station of creativity is already playing. You just weren't tuned to it. And from that place, ideas arrive not as strained effort, but as effortless flow. Health responds too. A body braced in survival mode doesn't digest well, doesn't repair well, doesn't rest deeply. But coherence signals safety. It tells your biology we're okay now. And the body unlocks resources it couldn't spare before. This is why shifts in identity often bring unexpected boosts in energy, recovery, even healing. And then there's purpose. When static dominates, purpose feels like a puzzle you're always trying to solve. What should I be doing? What's my calling? But when you live in coherence, purpose reveals itself as resonance. You don't have to chase it. It's the station that feels most like home. You follow what expands you, and the field aligns doors to open there. What's wild is that none of this requires monumental outer change at first. It's the quiet adjustment of the dial, embodied across domains. And when people around you notice the difference, they'll call it luck or timing or you've changed. But you'll know the truth. You tuned into a new broadcast, and life simply matched it. But there's still a deeper dimension we haven't touched yet. Beyond daily life, beyond relationships or career, there's a larger intelligence in play. Something that responds the moment you stop trying to grip reality and instead let yourself synchronize with it. There's a point in this journey where the mechanics, the breathwork, the anchors, the identity rehearsal begin to reveal something bigger, something that goes beyond your personal nervous system or even your chosen timeline. Because coherence doesn't just tune you into a new version of yourself, it tunes you into the field itself. the larger intelligence weaving through all of life. Think about it. When you're stuck in static, everything feels separate. You versus the problem. You versus time, you versus money or love or health. But when you settle into coherence, that separateness thins. The same way a radio broadcast doesn't live inside your radio. It's all around you, waiting for your tuner to align. The timelines of your life aren't waiting for you to invent them. They're already alive in the field. And here's where the paradox comes in. For most of our lives, we're trained to grip harder, control the outcome, push until the universe bends. But in this dimension, control is actually the weakest move. The field doesn't respond to force, it responds to resonance, which means the greatest strength isn't in clutching tighter, it's in surrender. Not surrender as giving up, but surrender as syncing up, a deliberate softening into alignment with what already exists. When you've had moments of synchronicity, bumping into the right person at the exact right time or finding the solution right when you stopped obsessing, that wasn't random luck. That was you momentarily relaxing into coherence with the larger intelligence. You tuned in without realizing it. And here's the radical shift. Once you trust this intelligence, life stops feeling like a battle you have to win. It becomes a partnership. You no longer exhaust yourself trying to generate everything from scratch. You allow yourself to be carried by currents that were always there. This doesn't mean sitting back passively. It means acting from alignment rather than desperation. It means letting your nervous system stay open even when your mind doesn't have the full plan. And it means realizing that surrender isn't weakness. It's the deepest confidence. The confidence that the field knows how to meet you when your signal is steady. And when you live from that place, the boundary between spiritual and practical dissolves. You're not just manifesting outcomes, you're participating in a larger coherence that reshapes how reality itself flows through you. Which brings us full circle. How do we take everything we've explored, from safety to identity to surrender, and land it in one final, simple truth you can carry forever? So here we are, full circle. You started with the ache of wanting, with the frustration of trying so hard and wondering why nothing seemed to shift. You've seen now that it was never about effort, never about forcing belief into your head until it cracked. It was always about the signal. Think about the radio again. All those stations are already playing. The timelines of love, abundance, health, creativity, belonging. You don't create them by wishing harder. You don't beg the universe to broadcast them. They're already here, humming in the background of this moment. The only question is, where are you tuned? When your nervous system is stuck in urgency, the hand on the dial shakes and you only hear static. When your identity is still entangled in old stories, the preset keeps pulling you back to the same station. When you split your signals or grip with over-control, the music fades. But the moment you steady your breath, align your posture, soften into coherence, the tuner clicks. And there it is, the clear sound of the life you thought was far away, playing right here, right now. That's the secret simplicity of quantum shifting. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to invent it. You don't have to demand it arrive. You tune into it. You embody it until it feels like home. And once it feels like home, reality has no choice but to meet you there. So take this with you. Every step, every breath, every conversation is a chance to tune the dial. Each moment is an invitation to ask, am I broadcasting static, or am I broadcasting the music of the life I'm ready for? And when you live like that, the shift stops being something you wait for. It becomes who you are. The field isn't hiding from you, it's singing right now. All you have to do is listen.